a lot going on about African-American women feeling like their Black men are not supporting them. There's been a lot of posts on social media and a lot of rants going on. Even 50 Cent came out the other day pretty much saying that he likes something else because they're more exotic, right? And a lot of backlash he's gotten from that. So I would love to know how you guys feel about that statement that African-American women feel like their men are not supporting them and how we can change it. So Lee, I would like you to start with that.
I think where I want to start is emphasizing something that we all are conscious of, but I think it's important to continue to reinforce this concept that Black people are not a monolith, you know what I mean? So when 50 Cent says something, it's not a reflection of the rest of the Black race. When Beyonce does something, it's not a reflection of the rest of the, good or bad, you know what I mean? And so that, more to that point, I personally could give a damn what 50 Cent says. But with that being said, that question reminds me of a conversation I had with a good friend the other day. And she posed the exact same question. And I think my response to her was, we do and we don't. You know, again, Black people are not a monolith, but enough of us don't do enough to speak up and speak out and empathize with the experience of Black women. And the analogy I used for her in defense of the ones that do was, say you're in high school and you get picked on. You know, you walk down the hallway, people might pull your hair, they might comment on your hair. They might poke fun at the way you dress, the clothes, the way you walk, your mannerisms. And these are all experiences that are, you know, relatable to Black women. And let's say that, you know, you're getting picked on, you're getting bullied every single day of the week. And it's those microaggressions. It doesn't, on the outside looking in, it seems small, but it's the collection of those microaggressions that are traumatizing. You know what I mean? So it may get to a point where that kid in high school snaps and lashes out and says, you know what, F all of y'all. You know, I don't want to have anything to do with any of y'all. What she may not have noticed was the one that was speaking in her defense each time, was the one that was pulling somebody to the side each time and saying, nah, that's not good, it's not okay. Even when that person was being picked on forward. And I think for much of the Black experience, it's exactly that. And not just with Black women to Black men, but also with Black men and Black women. I say that to say that I think that, you know, we oftentimes are so traumatized by the microaggressions and the experience of being Black in this country that we miss the fact that there are people speaking of our demographic speaking in our defense, you know, but we're so traumatized by those microaggressions that we don't notice it. You know what I mean? We don't notice it in the crowd of frustration and emotions that we have with the experiences we're going through, you know? And so what happens is we not only lash out at the people who are abusing us or traumatizing us, but we even lash out at the people who are there to support us. Even when those people in and of themselves are experiencing similar trauma and trying to deal with that in conjunction with supporting you. And then what happens is you have this unfortunate series of events where now people get turned off from wanting to support because they feel like they're not supported in their own traumas. And now you have both sides lashing out against each other when both of them are essentially just as bullied in that school. And so I say, you know, I don't think we are doing enough. You know what I mean? I think that we need to do a better job of empathizing. We need to do a better job of understanding that even the smaller issues, like I'm reminded of a friend who was telling me about her experience living in San Diego, which is, we understand seems like a liberal city. She was telling me how she couldn't get employment because she would typically wear her head wrap and she would wear her braids up. And that's something that's natural to us, you know, in our culture. And you know, I'll pause myself for a minute because I was thinking, you know, in a vacuum, if I was to see that situation, I would think that, oh, you know, it's not that big a deal. You know, it's just her hair. She just, you know, people were just messing around with her hair. And that's, as a man, me empathizing based on my biased perspective. But I think it's important for us as Black men to step outside of ourselves to empathize better with with women's experience in Black communities, you know what I mean? And so I say that to say, no, we don't do enough. We do need to do a better job of supporting, of empathizing, and putting ourselves in a position to understand not just that situation we're observing, but the totality of those microaggressions that she's facing and how that one situation we're seeing is a microcosm for the whole.
I appreciate your response. Thank you so much. Howard, that question goes to you next.
So my take is that we don't know how. And this goes back to our history of families being broken apart. I had the unfortunate situation of visiting a prison environment years back, probably about 20 years ago. And it brought me to tears because that's where all the brothers were. And our community has been fractured since the beginning of America. And so we don't have a sustained history of being a husband-wife family. Many of us are from separated homes. So my thought of the mentoring is to teach brothers first to love themselves, to show their strength in being vulnerable. And once that foundation is built, then the capacity becomes available to them to fully pay attention to mothers, daughters, and family. And so it's easy to say that we as Black men are against our sisters or not doing the right thing, but I fall back on we don't know how. And so part of my thought pattern of the mentoring is to, again, lay that foundation of self-worth to be able to build on it and to make them worthy of being who they want to become, which are good fathers and great husbands. That's it.
Thank you. I appreciate your response. Michael, that goes to you next.
Howard, you are so correct. The short answer is no. Black women are not where they're supposed to be. And we need to put the Black woman back on the pedestal where she belongs. As Howard just mentioned, we don't know how. It's plain and simple. Young brothers watching television, what do you see? You see women being objectified. Most young Black brothers, not all, but maybe a large percentage of them don't grow up in a home to see how dad treats mom. So when he becomes a man and takes a girlfriend or a wife, he has no idea. Another course I was playing around with is we need to teach our young brothers a course in manhood. Manhood. What is it to be a man? It's not just the physical maturity, but what it means, things like responsibility, morality, and stuff like that. And we need to go back to understand that the Black woman has been picking up the slack from slavery. When the Black man got lost and lost his way, it was the Black woman who held the family together. And most of our Black women are just tired right now, tired. And you want to talk about microaggression? A young sister out there just trying to find a brother who have his head on his body to start her own family. And you know how it is. She go through the dating process and can't find a brother who knows his head from his elbow. And then she looks around and she see one fine Black brother, look like he's going somewhere, got his shit together. He has a white girl. Not that there's anything wrong with that in itself, but from the Black woman's perspective, how come she come out of nowhere and can pick one of the cream off the top? And here I am trying to find a brother who just has a plan. Yes. So the Black woman is not being treated the way she's supposed to be treated. She's being bombarded on several levels. And most brothers probably are well-intentioned, but they don't have a clue how to treat the Black woman as the queen that she rightly is.
Thank you, Michael. Omar, that question goes to you next.
I dig everything everybody's saying. I think another element that's kind of forgotten and is something I am guilty of is not acknowledging enough my privilege as a male, right? There's a thing called male privilege, and I think we as men need to acknowledge that and understand that, you know, women are suffering from it. It happens quite often within the educational field. That's something I had to really address. I mean, I don't want to get too in depth with the situation, but long story short, it was a point where I wasn't being reprimanded, and I understood why I wasn't being reprimanded, because I was that strong Black male presence within the school. And another counterpart of mine, who happened to be a Black woman, was reprimanded, actually lost their job. So hence the reason why I'm no longer at this place. But it's just a matter of that things like that happen even within the workplace that we may not even be abreast of as men, because we are seen as the strong, you know, withstanding men that we're supposed to be, right? But we don't see the other side, right? So I think that's one element. And another element is just listen. I think we don't listen enough, and we don't actually give them their time. I think what I'm seeing, and this is a regurgitation of what I'm seeing via social media. For example, Breonna Taylor, right? The only reason why I don't have Breonna Taylor on the back of my virtual background, because it's just too bright. And I didn't want the brightness to take away from my dark skinnedness, because it's already a battle, right? But even with that, and even to talk about it breaks my heart, because this sister was just taken from us. And the fact that just fell to the wayside. We can always say Black Lives Matter, but is it to a point where like just our Black men matter and not our Black women? It's to a point where when do we acknowledge our privilege and understand that and acknowledge it and do something about it? I don't want to sit here and say I have the answers, because I don't, because I'm still learning, as we all professional learners, and I'm acknowledging my privilege. And I want us as men to do something about it, because it's essential, right? Because if Black lives matter, our Black women need to matter, right? Our Black children, our Black males, it comes full circle. So I think we really need to understand that aspect. And I'm willing to listen. I'm always engaged in the conversation, and you know, it's something that's necessary. So I'm in that regard. So yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Justice for Breonna Taylor, by the way.
That's right. That's right. So actually, I just met with the women last week, and that was really the sentiment that we were having. We were discussing the struggle of the Black man coming home to the African-American woman, and what that looks like in the household, how it becomes more combative than it is cohesive. So Durrell, I would love for you to jump on that question as well.
Man, these guys said everything. But I'm going to piggyback over Howard. He says we don't know how, right? But there's another element to we don't know how. My thing is, the way I look at this situation is, yes, we're not doing enough to support our Black women. For me, I've always supported Black women, per se. And, you know, my wife is Black, you know, everybody I supported personally and, you know, professionally, Black women professionally. To say that, I have to also say that when we look at that, and, you know, you hear things like 50 Cent and, you know, all these people say all these negative things about Black women. I think as Black men, we need not to, you know, say all these negative things about our own, you know? So a lot of these things on social media, I've been, you know, chiming in here and there, listening to it. It's not good, you know? We shouldn't do that to our own Black women, because like Omar said, we all know our Black women are dealing with a lot, you know? So they need our support. And it goes back to how we don't know how. And I never ever thought about that, you know? how do we do it? How do we change this whole thing besides, you know, who we date? You know, it's more about like, it's deeper, you know, how do we support them better? And, you know, at this point, just having this conversation, we can all probably do way better and figure out ways we can support people in different ways, you know?
Thank you. I appreciate that. As a Black woman, I appreciate all of your answers. I love.
Deshauna, that's a tough question. And you have to dig deep in your soul to think about that.
Yeah, I want some accountability, and I want you guys to really look at yourselves and where you are and how where you are right now can really affect change. And even on that subject of the topic of the African American woman, I think the best place to start is asking. You know, just ask her, how can I support you? That's the first place to start. Ask your mother, ask your sister, your brother, the girl around the corner, whoever. Just start by asking how I can support you. I think that's a great place to start.
I'm grateful enough to still have my mother living and breathing. I do my best to text her and say I love her. She's a beautiful queen. I know she gave me the business today, so I don't call her enough. So I just make sure I text even if I don't get the call. But it's just little things like that, and then just building up to that, to build that to the other Black women in your life. It's just a matter of just letting them know that we appreciate them and we see them, because it's a matter of their presence being felt and known and heard, right? So I think it's just the baby steps with us, because it's at this juncture right now, it's just a matter of acknowledgement and knowing that they are here, right?
It's really a matter of asking the key questions. And a lot of times those questions are uncomfortable. So for example, you call someone to check in on them and say, how was your day? That's a very generic question. And most people are gonna answer in kind. What you wanna do is really probe. Like, how was your day should really be like, how was your day? You know, because at the end of the day, most of us wanna talk about something that happened that probably wasn't that good. And it's that key point that is going to relieve that little bit of stress that they were being heard and having that conversation. So one key step in the baby step is let's ask better questions. Let's not ask the generics, how you doing? And then kind of flow with that. Let's like, no, how you really doing? Like, what happened today? Like, tell me something good today. Tell me something bad. Tell me something you would change. Like, more specific. And then that would give people a menu in which to choose from in terms of opening up and having a better conversation. So that's just a tip.
Thank you. Awesome. I love that answer. That's a great answer. I appreciate that. As a Black woman, I appreciate that. You guys are giving me incredible answers, and you guys are showing accountability, which I definitely appreciate. So let's switch gears a little bit. This is another deep thought question. So recently I've been seeing a lot of things on social media, really egging on the fact that though we are asking for so much out there to be given to us, we are not being accountable for ourselves amongst ourselves in our own communities. So, and I see that there's a lot of divide amongst that statement. And I would love to know what you feel we could do to fill the gap in our own communities and that divide in our own communities with the mindset of progression, right? With the mindset of getting these things done. How can we fill that gap in our own communities? What it is that you feel you could do to fill that gap in your own community right now with the division that we have towards that. Let's start with Michael.
Steps you can start taking. Supporting our local Black business people. Now, let me add a little caveat to that. I don't mean because we're riding this wave now, you run to any Black person who's doing shoddy services and just plop down your money. That's not what I mean. I mean, I'm looking for a directory that tells me where I can find a Black, somebody who's a dry cleaner in my neighborhood who looks like me, and basically consciously start to spend my money with people who look like me. Because too often I know I'm guilty of that, we'll just get up and spend anywhere because I want certain things. And I never really pause and say, first of all, can I spend it within this community first? And if not, then I get it elsewhere. So we have to become community minded. Our people are so accustomed to living in hoods and not neighborhood. When you live in a neighborhood, the mindset is different. It means I'm not going to throw garbage on the street, which is something I witness. I'm not going to stand in a corner and take a leak because I respect my neighborhood. Then I'm going to move on to bigger things like somebody leaves a car or working on a car for the last 3 years on the same spot in the neighborhood starts to run down the neighborhood. Even if you rent, there are little things we can do to keep our neighborhood, make it look like human beings live there. Now, I must say this, it has to be a community effort. Because if you live in a house with, say, 3 or 4 other tenants and you're the only one who decides to keep it clean and the rest don't give a hoot, it makes you feel frustrated. So it's the consciousness we have to start with. Steps you can start taking. Supporting our local Black business people. Now, let me add a little caveat to that. I don't mean because we're riding this wave now, you run to any Black person who's doing shoddy services and just plop down your money. That's not what I mean. I mean, I'm looking for a directory that tells me where I can find a Black, somebody who's a dry cleaner in my neighborhood who looks like me, and basically consciously start to spend my money with people who look like me. Because too often I know I'm guilty of that, we'll just get up and spend anywhere because I want certain things. And I never really pause and say, first of all, can I spend it within this community first? And if not, then I get it elsewhere. So we have to start become community minded. Our people are so accustomed to living in hoods and not neighborhood. When you live in a neighborhood, the mindset is different. It means I'm not going to throw garbage on the street, which is something I witness. I'm not going to stand in a corner and take a leak because I respect my neighborhood. Then I'm going to move on to bigger things like somebody leaves a car or working on a car for the last 3 years on the same spot in the neighborhood starts to run down the neighborhood. Even if you rent, there are little things we can do to keep our neighborhood, make it look like human beings live there. Now, I must say this, it has to be a community effort. Because if you live in a house with, say, 3 or 4 other tenants and you're the only one who decides to keep it clean and the rest don't give a hoot, it makes you feel frustrated. So it's the consciousness we have to start with. This thing when everybody pulling together and you start to see the results and then you're encouraged by the results. Those are areas we can start to do because, you know, if you're in a community that looks depressed, you probably are quietly depressed and you don't realize it because where you live just looks horrible. I used to live in neighborhoods like that and I know what it looks like. I remember coming down the elevator, and when the elevator comes down to the ground level, I just went and picked up my son from daycare, and we were chatting, and this lady actually pulled her pants down and took a leak in the elevator. That stunned me. And I said, oh my God, I can't raise my son in a building like this. And I had to get out. So we have to take responsibility for what we do in our neighborhood, whether we own or we rent. And we have to start encourage others like, hey, brother, hey, you want to pick that? You drop this, man. You want to pick this up? Sorry, man. We're trying to keep this little space here clean. You know, you're with me, brother. You know, let's put this in the garbage can out there. It's those little things that we need to start to do, and basically get back in the idea of spending our money first within the community, if possible. If the service is available, we consciously spend the money with our community if the service is being offered. I think we can start there.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Michael. Durrell, that goes for you. How can we fill the gap or the divide in our own communities?
For one, I agree with what Michael said, but however, we have to keep in mind there's so many systemic issues and so many situations with police. You can go back to the 60s, how we've been suppressed for so many years, and how many things have been taken from us for the reason why we are in hoods or we're not in neighborhoods, because of so many things that has been taken away from us. So it'll take 3 shows to talk about that. You know what I mean? Because if we outline every single detail, we'll have a lot to talk about. But if you look at what's going on right now, I look at this moment in time with the Black Lives Movement and all the stuff that we're seeing on TV, and in regards to police reform, these situations are something that we can look at right now as a restart button in which we can have these conversations in our community, how we can make it better. And I feel that this time is very, very different, because you can actually feel it. You can actually see that young people are getting involved. This is a global situation where everybody is seeing what America's going through, and they actually are acknowledging that Blacks, our community, are actually going through all these racial divides, and the ugly in America right now is actually, bringing that forth into the world. This is a restart button for us to actually start building our communities, as we having to start having these conversations amongst ourselves like we're doing right now, and also in our communities to have these conversations, and then start holding those leaders that's in our communities accountable to make those extra efforts and change. We're talking about, like we said last time, actually having a Black agenda for our community. And I know, Omar, you can contest to this, Michael, everybody on this call can contest, on this video can contest to that we do need a Black agenda, economic agenda, where we can eventually start having those conversations. Because if someone's not in a position to have those conversations because they've been oppressed, their mother's been oppressed, their grandmother, they didn't have the means to do anything in regards to getting out of where they live, their hoods, how can we ever get to have those economical conversations if we can't get some of our people out of these situations? So it's a deeper thing. It's a situation where we have to hold our local leaders accountable to start bringing in some resources to get us out of these situations. Now, we can go into, maybe it's designed that way for government, to have everybody be in one place. Like, you look at the Bronx, Omar, you lived in the Bronx, you look at Pelham Parkway, that, primarily it's Albanians and Italians, or you look at certain areas like in the North Bronx, it's like Jamaica. I make jokes that it's Jamaica. You look at my father's area, Tracy Towers, we say that's Africa, So everything is like sectioned off, like, it's good that we're multicultural, but to start building up on that economical agenda, we all have to come together. And like I said, hold our leaders accountable, and that's putting the right people in place so we can start moving this situation forward and have meaningful conversation, how we can get people out of these situations. Yes, that means education. Yes, that means Black-owned businesses. Yes, that means putting teachers that like Omar and Howard in our schools to connect with students. Yes, that means putting younger people like myself to talk to younger people in the areas about finances or whatever it is, because I work for a bank, stuff like that. So it's like, it's a broader conversation. It's where does it begin? To say where it begins is not one sentence, it's not one word. I mean, there's so many things that we can talk about to how we can jumpstart this. But like I said, this moment in time with the Black Lives Matter movement and all the things we're talking about the social unrest, this is the perfect opportunity to hit the restart button. And that starts with November 4th. Please, let's get this clown out of the White House so we can really have some up and down the ballots, people that look like us or whoever it is that said they're going to help us get out of the situations we're in. And that's when it comes to voting. Voting is very important. We all have to come out and vote more. A lot of people say, there's no Black agenda on the presidential level. Forget the presidential level. Let's start working on local levels and start holding these leaders accountable to start propagating a Black agenda that way and start working our way from the bottom all the way up. But we always have to vote. I hear a lot of people on TV, I criticize Charlemagne. I wish I could debate Charlemagne right now on 105.1. Because some of the things he's talking about, I'm going to hold my vote back. Look, we cannot hold our vote back. Every year you should be voting. I want to ask him, do you vote every year? And he probably doesn't. He probably only votes every 4 years when the president comes out and then criticizes him. So the thing is, we got to vote every single year and make sure we get the right people in place to move our agenda forward.
I appreciate you. Thank you for that response. Omar, would you like to add anything to that?
Sure. But what I have to say, one, I can't top the politician right here. That was awesome, man. If you need a running mate, let me know. Um, I don't necessarily have a concrete initiative, however, that I'm fulfilling, or that one, we got to get those parks open. If we're in a phase and we are able to have those parks open, the kids want that. I mean, I was having a conversation about this earlier, a couple of days ago, and I know going through, and also that's another thing, we're going through a pandemic outside of, you know, police brutality and social injustice. We're also going through a pandemic that's, you know, targeting us, right? So it's a lot of things that we're battling. So I would like to see, or something you know, I would love to try to start some type of program where we could, you know, get some arts within these communities. I think that's an element that's not really represented within school, within programs. I see that they're being taken out. Just film, painting, anything within the arts, music. I think that's an aspect that's missing. Just overall recreational activity. These kids need something to do. I'm just thinking of their psyche right now, right? They're being told they can't go outside. They're being told to go outside for essentials. And it's kind of like we're reinforcing them to just stay to their vices and do nothing. And it's just really difficult because me being a teacher, I have an idea of, you know, what kids are going through and what home situations are, because everyone's home situation isn't, you know, the best. So I would say, you know, just be more mindful of that, because the mental health of these kids are at stake as well, right? I just think we need to consider that. So on top of that, an initiative for mental health for our young Black kids, because that's something that's needed. Yeah. Outside of that, I guess I've been on this wave of mental. I've been reading a bunch of books. I'm actually reading Charlemagne's book, Shook One. It's quite interesting. But I've been more glued to Jason Wilson, Cry Like a Man. And that's something that we need to also push within the community, just the mental health and the aspect of our young Black men and women, because, you know, they're feeling it.
Omar, it's funny you say about mental health. We're going through a lot right now. This pandemic is psychological. We're psychologically being damaged right now. There's 3 pandemics, by the way. Donald Trump, right? Donald Trump, police brutality, racial injustice, and then COVID, you know? So it's a lot of things going on right now. And this is psychologically damaging to kids that have to stay inside and not live a normal life, can't do the things they want to do. So yeah, I mean, you know, on top of the things we already had to experience, maybe broken homes, you know, it's a lot of things we're dealing with in our community that may need psychological evaluation. So I agree with you, man.
So it's hard to like think of a really concrete initiative during this whole pandemic, because I myself have been, you know, battling the whole depression stage of an anxiety, because it's like, you don't know. You know, we don't know anything, and it seems like the news keeps getting worse, right? And then we get distractions, which I'm not going to get into those distractions. Jada will, you know what I'm talking about, guys. So it's like, we don't know. We don't know.
I understand, but we are resilient as a people. I believe that. All right, so we're going to go forward with that anyway. Langley, that question goes to you. How can we fill the gap in our communities or the divide?
Well, I want to applaud you, because you're taking a step that I think is uber necessary, which is building community. And, you know, by having this forum for us who've never met to come on and share our experiences and our ideas and our thoughts is a huge step. So if we can have more of these on different levels, I think it'll go a long way towards building everything that has been mentioned, and also just opening communications. So for example, where I am here in Florida, I mean, I've only been here a year fully, well, basically because of COVID. And a gentleman came across the street today to ask me if I wanted to be a part of the HOA. And I'm like, this guy don't even know me, out of the blue. But then I thought about it and I said, if we had that more in our neighborhoods back home, that would go a long way. So let's say you lived in an apartment building. If you had just like a leader on each floor that talked about, what was mentioned earlier, making sure our floor is clean. I mean, a lot of the things that we did in colleges and in the dorms, competition. Let's make sure our floor is clean. Make sure our garbage is picked up. And that kind of thing spreads because you can have quality of life issues into a competition, and people like competition, and especially if it's for a just cause. So opening up communication on levels that we probably never thought of before, I think can go a long way to getting the full agenda that has been mentioned to move forward, is basically what I think. So I applaud you, Shauna, for getting us rocking and rolling. A group here that has never met and having a conversation. This should be done 1,000-fold on many other levels.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm going to hold everybody accountable. So next time we meet, it's going to keep getting a level deeper.